Welcome back. It is now 1 minute after 2 Eastern time, and we're going to go ahead and kick off our second part of the day. The first up will be Walter Combs. We'll be talking about weather cameras and giving us an update on what's going on in that field. We've had Walter on several times before. Weather cameras are a huge piece of the puzzle that the U.S. helicopter safety team has been embracing and pushing for the last several years.
Okay, thank you very much. Of course, I'm Walter Combs, Weather Camera Program Office. I wanted to start off with saying that we're now a part of the Flight Service Organization within the agency, and it's actually a great organization to be in. We moved over from the PMO, and we're now within our what I like to call the mothership, or we're in the program in which we serve the most. So it's a great relationship. I'm quite happy to be in flight services with the program, and as you can see, we're already making progress, great progress within this new organization. So that's all good news, and just wanted to share that with you. We'll go to the next slide. Okay, great. So weather cameras, our mission is aviation safety and efficiency. That's what we target is the reduction of accidents and flight interruptions due to weather. So how our goals are to reduce the aviation accidents, the related interruptions, and to improve flight decision making. So give the pilot more information, give the dispatcher more information, to confirm the weather information that they have otherwise, as well as to give them the confidence to make the decision whether to go or no go. So let's go to the next slide if we could, Rex. Okay, so how'd weather cameras get started? Well, we got started because of a desperate need. There's so many times in aviation, especially in Alaska, you've got to fly out to see whether or not you can make it through the pass or not. And there were so many accidents in Alaska that people became innovative. What can we do to help improve the situation? And so cameras were brought up as a concept, were implemented as a test and development or a test and evaluation program, and proved to be successful. So the program was stood up, baselined, and we began our implementation of the services and refining the service that we do provide in order to help reduce the number of aviation accidents, especially in Alaska. So let's move on. If we could, next slide. Okay, so what do cameras do? Well, they give you the opportunity to look before you fly instead of fly out and take a look. It's been, it seems elementary, but to actually establish service and get it put out there wasn't quite as evident originally. And so now that we have, especially with the new technologies, we're able to provide you now these images to coincide with your METARs and your other weather information, so that you can combine the two and get, what we like to call the whole picture. So in this slide, you can see a current image there to the left. That's what it looks like right now. And then, of course, the clear day comparison side by side, you can make a quick determination that, wow, the visibility is really down. Coincidentally, the AWOS at this location showed that minimums, there were, all the minimums were there, but the airport is just behind you, and this is the flyway into that airport. So even though your weather right there on the end of the airport where the AWOS was setting is giving you information that says, yeah, you can make it in, or you have your minimums here, you can fly in at a distance, which where the cameras really perform well is at a distance. They're looking further out beyond the airport. And it gives you that information that you need to say, oh my gosh, it looks a lot different now with that camera image combined with those METARs. So let's go to the next slide if we could, Rex. All right, so weather cameras, we have a new website. It's weathercams.faa.gov. as you can see, all them icons are camera sites where there's between 3 and 4 cameras at every site. In Alaska, we have 230 locations. Canada has about 215 camera sites that we are integrating their images onto our website. So they own and maintain the camera systems. We're just simply rehosting their images on our website to make them available to pilots across Alaska, down across Canada, and into the CONUS. As you'll see also, you see some icons sitting there in Colorado. We're already started expanding our system using the same methodology that we're using with Canada, where the state DOT installs the camera systems, and we integrate their images onto our website to make them available to pilots at large. We have a really wide range of users. Of course, helicopters are one of our primary customers. The helicopter operations and fixed wing, along with the fixed wing. So, there's a number of different industries that are using the cameras, the EMS, search and rescue, military, and then of course, all the GA, Part 121, 135, and that nature of aviation, of course. So we also feed our images to the National Weather Service, where they use them to enhance their forecasts, as well as some of their graphical models that they're now pushing out. They use the camera images to support and enhance their service. And we provide them to the Next Gen organization, research and development organizations, as well as a direct feed into flight service, where flight service can brief pilots en route, in weather briefings en route, to give them the weather conditions ahead of them, as they're flying through. So let's go to the next slide if we could, Max. And I'm kind of busting through this knowing that we're going to have answers at the end, so questions at the end. So please capture those and be ready to ask me anything you want there at the end of this slide presentation. This is a depiction of how cameras are used on a flight route. So on our website, our website actually provides all of that service. So not just camera images, but also METARs and TAFs and PIREPs and NOTAMs and all the other aviation information that we can gather and provide on the website. We do. So this depiction is a flight from Anchorage over to Cordova. It's about 170 or 175 air miles. And in the old days, you'd fly out and take a look. You'd fly over to that mountain pass, and if it was clogged in, you'd have to turn around and go back to Anchorage and sit on the ground. And every hour you might launch and go see if you can make it through the pass. I used to tell a nice little story about this, where over in Cordova, we're living in Anchorage and we're going to Cordova to Thanksgiving over at Grandma's, and over at Grandma's in Cordova, the weather looks like it's good. Sure, you can make it in. Come on over. Meanwhile, in the pass and out across Prince William Sound, the weather is all the way to the surface, all the way to the water. So you weren't able to tell that. You'd call your far end and they're saying, yeah, the weather's great. Come on over. Meanwhile, you've got all that weather between you. So that's what weather cameras brings. And that's also what our website brings to the aviation industry, is this ability to access all of your flight data along your route and make your flight decision based on the entire route of all the information that is along that route. So if we can move on to the next slide. Our camera systems are modular. They're in the whole scale of things, they're very inexpensive. They're very high availability and very maintainable. We built them with those metrics in mind, specifically in mind. We want to be able to add a camera if we want to add a camera, just plug it in and it's go. We also want to be able to maintain it, and we have a 30-minute maintenance philosophy. It might take you a full day to get to the site, but within 30 minutes, you can restore that service at that site. And that design plan has really been beneficial to us. So We have cameras. We have a weatherhead at many of our locations that provides winds, temps, and humidity and rainfall. We are working on a project right now to add additional information, ceiling and visibility to that weatherhead, and that's in development right now. It won't be available for probably at least a year, maybe a year and a half's time, but it's under development right now. That data all feeds into our camera control unit we use IP telecommunications, so whatever platform we're using to provide our IP telecoms into our cloud network. From the cloud, it's fed into our website, it's fed over to flight service, to the research and development organizations, and we're developing an API right now that'll be available soon, where users can come in and get that information and provide it on their own aviation apps, any of these applications that provide you flight following and flight information. So you should start seeing our camera images populate a lot of those different platforms out there here this year. So with that, I think we'll move on to the next slide if we could, Rex. So being modularized in the way it's been designed, it's been very good to us for implementation at locations. Basically, you need space, power, comm, and camera images, the direction that you want to see, your camera views. So the way the system's built modular is we can go to just about any location, and if there isn't one of those elements or any of those elements, we can develop them ourselves. So those modules can be stacked together to provide all four: space, power, comm, and camera views. So the image you can see up in the upper left-hand corner, that's a solar and wind-powered platform that we installed our cameras on. So there's no infrastructure at that location. We went in, developed everything that we needed to provide those camera images year-round. And then, as you can see, there's a bunch of different solutions there where the far right image, that's the state of Alaska, provided us the tower and the electricity. So we have space and power. We developed our own telecommunications and our camera views at the top of the tower. So let's go to the next slide, Rex, if we could. Okay, and sometimes we get really fancy with our installations where we need to establish weather camera images. We can, and this sort of proves that very concept. So the one there at Misty Fjords has been in place now for pretty close to 7 years. It's since 2011 that's been installed. So it's been sitting down there operating and providing images year-round since 2011. So anyway, we have the ability to establish camera services just about anywhere we go. So we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so what does it all mean? Well, it all boils down to the very targets that we're after: reduction of weather-related accidents and the reduction of flight interruptions, weather-related flight interruptions. So you're seeing here a performance metric that was developed to prove that the weather camera system really was producing the benefits that we thought as an agency that they should be providing. And so you can see we started with a baseline of 0.28 accidents per 100,000 hours. And in 2008, the first target we had with 25 installations, so that was part of the metric, was install 25 installations each year. And so with the first 25 sites, our target was supposed to be 0.24. The actual result was 0.21. So you can see each year following how our reduction rate went down, and our actuals actually exceeded what we had expected. So in the end, we have about an 85% reduction in weather-related aviation accidents that are attributable directly to the weather camera services that we provided. So exact same concept with the efficiency flight interruption metric, and there's a 69% reduction there. So if we could move on to the next one, Rex. So the NTSB recognized the benefits of cameras, and in 2012, they conducted a pretty thorough study and provided a safety recommendation to the FAA to establish cameras in Hawaii, camera services in Hawaii, camera services in the CONUS, and to enable flight service specialists to brief the camera images like they do in Alaska. And that's that function where pilots will request a weather briefing. The flight service specialist will provide them a description of what the camera images are depicting along their route. Whether they're in pre-flight or whether they're en route, they can always call flight service and get an update. So those are the three components of the three separate NTSB recommendations that were forwarded to the FAA and to the weather camera program. And those are the recommendations that we're working on now with the CONUS and with Hawaii work that we're doing. So if we could move on, please. In April of 2020, we received approval from the Joint Resources Council to implement the camera systems in Hawaii and to implement camera systems in the CONUS in a twofold approach. The first being to implement camera images from the state DOTs, any state DOTs that want to participate in the camera program, and we'll integrate their images just like we are with Colorado. So Colorado was the first implementation of this method in the CONUS, and is the example that we're using for all the other state DOTs. So we're inviting the state DOTs to participate in the weather camera program. We will help them with all the technical information and integrate their images onto our website. And I'll describe that here a little bit more in the future, here in the briefing. So, and then the third step that we're doing is we're conducting an acquisition business case. They call that a JRC business case to identify and fund additional camera systems in Alaska, as well as those locations in the CONUS where we still need camera images outside of those images that we develop with the state DOTs. So that's kind of the methodology here for expanding camera systems across the CONUS. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, Hawaii. So I think Hawaii is one of those subject areas for weather cameras that has been, very long, for quite a few years now. The Hawaiian pilots and the aviation industry there has really coveted camera images and really wants it. They want this camera service. So we're finally there. We have started our work in Hawaii right now as of January 18th, and actually as of even today, we've made more progress. But we've conducted completed our engineering surveys and our site selections on Kauai, Maui, Molokai, and Lanai. We will move on to the remaining islands, here in the next couple of months. Our installations on these sites that we've got our site selections on will begin in April, and our estimated completion of all of the islands is September of 22. When we start installing cameras, we're probably going to start on Kauai. Those are the sites that are maturing the fastest for us. But as soon as they get installed and we have camera images, we're going to make them available on the website, and you'll see camera services start popping up and just expanding across the islands in Hawaii. So we're not going to hold those back for the whole network to come up at once. We're just going to start adding those. Every time one of them comes available, we're going to add it to the website. So you'll see them start standing out. Next slide, please. Okay, so I wanted to spend just a couple of minutes describing how we select our camera sites. We don't just go out and start putting up camera sites and hope that they serve aviation. There's a very detailed approach to establishing camera services and trying to derive the maximum benefit out of that out of each one of those cameras. So what we do is we go in and we identify all of the existing routes. What are the typical routes that pilots fly, whether it's an air tour operation or air taxi. We're looking for all of those routes. And as you can see in this depiction, we've identified one of the several routes that exist on the island of Kauai. Then we go in and we start looking at where do we have accidents? Where do we have weather-related interruptions to our flights? Where are there known patterns that come in and affect our flight decision making? And we call those pinch points. Once we find those pinch points along all of those routes, now we know where. We call those camera service areas. Now we know what areas need to be served with camera images. And then comes the fine art of identifying space, power, and comm, the most efficient installations where we can capture the greatest area of that service area for the least amount of cost and the highest amount of benefit. So it's an art. The science is in all of the hardware and the actual installation. The art is in selecting those camera sites so they serve the greatest portion of aviation operations as possible in that location. Later on, we will come back a year or 2 years after the operation is solid and everybody's flown it and has a good feel for it. And then we start identifying gap fillers. Where are those locations that we really need another camera? And we attack it from that perspective. So an initial outlay to try to get the maximum benefit possible, and then gap fillers to fill those little areas where we still have a problem. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So the state DOT camera integration program that we've got is pretty basic. We share our technology with state DOTs, municipalities, airport managers, and help them get camera services established using our technology and our industry knowledge of these networks, and help stand those networks up in that fashion. And then to bring those images into our system, into our cloud, where we format them, process them, make them available on the website, and distribute them to all the different users out there, such as flight service and the other entities that I've described. And there's one thing it's one thing to go install a camera system and make sure it's operating all the time, and that would be the state DOT's roles in this project. And then the FAA's role is to do the other half of the project, and that is retrieve the images, bring them in, process them, distribute them, format them, and place them on the website, as we do with all the other camera images. So it's a real partnership. An ongoing partnership. Our partnership with Colorado is really it's a great method and a great way to move forward with aviation safety with the state DOTs and with, of course, the FAA. So we're proving that with Colorado, who's a great partner, and we really look forward to expanding camera services across the CONUS in this same method. So if we could go to the next slide, please. And I just thought I would throw this slide in for us. This briefing that I'm giving you right now, I've given to others in the last few months. So you may have seen this briefing already. And if you have, thank you for your patience. But for those who haven't, I'm trying to provide, an overall view of what the FAA's weather camera program is doing and where we're headed. And so this is just a part of that. So this is that description of the 13 sites we have in Colorado. We helped Colorado install their sites. So they're not reinventing the wheel. We shared all of our camera equipment and all of our systems and how we operate, and let them pick that up and maybe they can refine it for whatever works for them. But we're giving them a leg up on hardware, on design, on engineering, and then of course we're displaying their images. In fact, and I've said this before, but the one complaint that was conveyed to me that the pilots have had with Colorado is there just aren't enough camera sites in Colorado. They want more. So the state of Colorado is installing 10 additional sites this summer. So we're going to host their images. You'll see 10 more sites pop up here on the website. And hopefully here in the very near future, you're going to see us stand some sites up in Montana and other states that I'm working with right now to help them get their systems established. So it's starting to roll forward, and I'm really looking forward to the future with the camera services and the partnerships with the DOTs across the CONUS. So I think with that, Rex, we go to the last slide. This is the end. This is actually from a little lighthouse up in Lynn Canal between Juneau and Ketchikan, and Eldred Rock is the name of that lighthouse. But if you go to Eldred Rock all through the summer, you can see that there's a pair of eagles that sit on that tower, and it's pretty cool to watch them. So anyway, I just thought I would share that with you guys. With that, I'm done with this briefing, and I'll open it up to questions.
All right, Walter, very, very interesting to say the least, and very happy to see progress is being made in other states besides Alaska, Colorado, and Hawaii. Definitely want to see these types of weather cameras across the lower 48. I think they're really beneficial in getting that information in the pilot's hands to make better decisions. If you have a question, you want to come off mute and ask Walter a question, that's fine. Or if you want to put it in the chat, that's fine too. I got one question in chat from our friend Randy Bass. Walter, will the VEIA capability be included for Hawaii camera sites?
Yes, we actually plan to establish the VIA service in all of our camera images with a resulting output that helps validate visibility and sealing, especially. So for those of you that don't know what VIA is, it's an algorithm that's being developed right now. It's pretty advanced algorithm that extrapolates information from our camera images, especially sealing and visibility information. And what we can do with that data is we're using it to help validate METAR or AWOS, ASOS outputs, as well as to help give the pilot better information on distance and sealing from the image. So right now, you can take a look at an image, but you can't really determine how far an obstacle is or how far your visibility is. And what that VIA program is going to do is it's going to bring a lot more certainty to the service that we provide. So when you look at that image and there's an output that says 10 miles in this image, you look at another one and it says 4 miles, another image that's looking a different direction, then you have a feeling for where that weather lays in, and you also have a lot more confidence in your ability to determine distance and sealing using the camera images. So it's a great program. In fact, Randy's organization, Jenny Colavito, is leading that program, and we've been working together for some time now to develop that service. And I think for the FAA's weather camera program, that service is going to be an outstanding addition to what we do, and it will be available, I'm sure, to all of the industry out there. And I think it has so many more benefits and capabilities beyond what we were able to use it for. I really look forward to that service standing up more so, and for the final refinements of that algorithm. So yes, indeed, it'll be added to all of our images. It'll be a part of our program in the future. So thanks for that question, Randy.
Okay. Anybody online, if you want to come off mute and ask a question directly to Walter, please feel free. If no one has any questions, one of the questions I have for you, Walter, is as far as, integration, is this something that you can use an existing camera and build around that and integrate or retrofit that? And also, as if you have a weather station, I assume you can then take and add the camera piece to it and just increase that footprint. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, that's correct. That's what we do. We add, we try to provide a METAR with all of our camera images. So wherever there's a METAR, if it's within a certain vicinity of our camera image, we include that, and you're able to actually look at your METAR, look at your image, and determine, that expansion of the footprint as you describe it. And your original question was with integration. Yes, we can and are integrating or looking at integrating images that already exist. There are some road cameras along the highways that can be very beneficial to us and to aviation, and aviators use a lot of those camera images already. So what we want to do is work with the states to pull some of those in and integrate those into our system as well. So when you go to our website or you go to our API, you get a download of all of those images along your intended route. And so, yes, indeed, there are certain requirements that we have with cameras, but most of the cameras, the modern cameras today, pretty much meet all the metrics, the performance and the technical specifications that we need. There's a couple of nuances that are different from security cameras or road cameras in that most of the security and road cameras are looking to the ground, right? You want to see the ground. What we want to see is a split on the horizon, a 70-30 or a 60-40 split of the horizon to give a pilot that information near and far, especially on the horizon for weather, and that nature of things. So that's the nuance there, and then it becomes a negotiation as to whether, will this camera owner be willing to tip that camera up so that we get that split on the horizon that we need or not. And so, but yes, we're looking for those, and if you're aware of them, shoot me an email, and I'm more than happy to start considering those. And you're going to start seeing those kind of images standing up on our website in the near future.
Okay. My next question comes in from Cliff Johnson, the FAA Tech Center. Looking at the imagery in the video, the visibility ceiling data that you mentioned, is it recorded or archived over time, either for VIA program or for what Gary had mentioned earlier this morning, Gary Picadna, that is, basically is the historical safety analysis in cases where you might not have a co-located ASOS or AWOS, but if you had the imaginary imagery, you might be able to discern ceiling visibility to a particular location. So are you keeping the data? Are you storing it and archiving it so that you can actually go back and look at it?
Yeah, we archive our data for 28 days right now. We're pushing that out now that we're in a cloud environment. We have a lot more horsepower and a lot more storage capability. So we're going to push that out to 45 days that we store images, after which the images are destroyed or they're just deleted. A lot of the organizations that are, especially for research and development, they're downloading our images right now, and they store those long term. So the VIA program has a huge archive of information, of images that they store to help develop their system and, to give them that historical back look on all the images, and they can bring that in to process all of them, in each one of their processes if they want to do that. But otherwise, we store them for 28 days right now, with a future of 45 days, after which they are deleted.
Gotcha. Our next question, actually, it's a kind of a request, comes from Tom George over at AOPA. Tom says, we appreciate that you're using VFR routes as a basis for sighting cameras. Can you send us the write-up of the process you use to identify VFR routes to start that process? So,
We can, but I'll tell you how we do that. Is we work with the industry, with the pilots that fly the areas. That's how we determine where their routes are and how where we can serve them best. Kauai is a great example where we're working with a SME, one person that leads the group, but a whole host of different pilots and dispatchers across the island, to include even the Navy. The military has their inputs on where the routes are, where they have these pinch points and where they need service. So that is how we're determining the routes. The route that I depicted on the island of Kauai was generated using that pilot group of air tour operators. That is one of several primary routes that they all like to fly. And so that's why I laid that in there. If you lay them all down on the island, it's so messy you can't see the island. So we look at it from that perspective as well. But that is how we determine where these camera images are needed. Is we use the experts, we use our customer. Where are your needs, and how do we serve these needs the best? And believe it or not, there's even a negotiation in the site selections where we're working with those folks and say we want to select these sites, and there's a negotiation there. Well, we believe that we're better served if you put it over here, and so we go back and consider that those inputs for proper selection and installation. So that's the process we use. We don't. One of the difficulties we have is getting all the different operators to document where they fly on a regular basis. So that's always been kind of difficult. But when you all get in a room, pouring over a map and conversations back and forth, those routes all make themselves evident, and they serve those areas, those pinch points in the service area.
okay. So say I'm a state DOT. So this would be that conversation. Who do I contact? How do I contact them? What would be the timeline from start, survey, install online, and what's it going to cost me?
Okay, so the first one, who do you contact and how? On our website, on that weathercams.faa.gov, you can go to the feedback. There's let me make sure that I'm going to bring it up so I make sure I can walk you right through it quickly, efficiently here. But there's a submit feedback button there, and there are two email addresses under that submit feedback. Send it to the program office, the first one. Excuse me, it's the second one. Send it to the second one, the program office. But send me an email through that address with your requests and your questions and your intent to participate in that. Basically an overview of your situation and what you're looking for. You can also send it directly to me, walter.combs@faa.gov. That easy. Just walter.combs. And you can send that to me. All of your information over that email address as well. But I'll respond and we can get started with it. It's that simple. The cost is going to vary a little bit, but you can expect per site less than $8,000 a site for all the hardware, and then whatever your cost for implementation. If you've got your own IT teams and your own infrastructure kind of team that can install them and that nature of thing, or if you've got to reach out to one of the security companies or somebody like that to install, those are the kind of costs you can expect. Our system costs just under $8,000 to establish at most locations. But if you work with your local companies, I'm sure that you could probably get it cheaper. Our camera system is designed specifically for Arctic conditions or any conditions. So if you're on a mountaintop or you're down in the swamps, our system is pretty robust and can exist in those locations where A lot of the industry camera systems cannot exist in those locations. So it costs us a little more to have the manufacturer modify them to, for that kind of an existence. But at most locations across the CONUS, the industry standard camera systems would work. So I'd encourage you to look at both options, the same kind of system I'm using, or something that can be provided commercially, just down the street from you, kind of thing. So,
Okay.
did that answer all your questions, or you had several
So.
points?
I like the cost sounds pretty good. I can see where remote locations might have a challenge, depending on getting the connectivity you need. You may have to, run some wire or do a satellite system, which would increase cost possibly. But all right. Then the last question I think I had was, has anyone looked at actually integrating ADS-B receivers into these weather cameras? Because you talked about trying to figure out where everybody flies. That may be something additionally that we could look at, integrating that for better coverage in remote areas.
Well, I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about. You're talking about using ADS-B to identify the routes?
Not so much that as actually integrating an ADS-B receiver into your system so that we actually have better coverage of the aircraft that are in the area. The lower aircraft like us in the helicopter world, a lot of times don't get good coverage because we're at such a low altitude. There's so few receivers in the area that we don't get the coverage that we'd like to have. So I didn't know if that was something that anybody had even thought about yet.
Well, that's actually a part of our future development that we're researching right now. Is we're trying to determine how we could do just that, maybe actually add a receiver, an ADS-B receiver at each one of the camera sites, especially at those locations where there isn't, where ADS-B is not available. It's like in Alaska and in some of the mountain states and that nature of things. So we are, the weather camera program is truly working on that right now. We're just looking into it. I don't know right now it's part of our architecture. Actually have an engineer working on that right now. There's a lot of things that have to be done, this is a longer term project, no matter who you are, to integrate this information into the whole ADS-B infrastructure, the servers and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of things that need to be worked out. But yes, that is in the process. And someday you'll see that. You'll see how cameras and all the other aviation services dovetail with each other and become a more full or a fuller service. So.
No, that sounds awesome. I appreciate it. Well, there was a couple people I know that are on this call that are heavily involved in ADS-B, and that's kind of why I brought it up, so that they may call you and say, hey, how do we get involved?
Yeah, please reach out, because it's something that I think that it's a great opportunity for ADS-B to expand their system just using our infrastructure and our telecom backbone. And I think that it's going to be an excellent way to move forward. So anybody that is interested in that, I put the contact information there on the in the chat there, and I'll add my personal FAA email address. There we go. So I'm going to send that. So my personal email address is there too. So reach out to me if you're in that industry and you have some support to offer or suggestions or questions. I'm happy to take those, and that would help further our investigation as to how best to integrate ADS-B onto our platforms.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Walter. Greatly appreciate you making time for us today. I know there's a little bit of a time difference, but I think everything worked out really well, and great presentation as always. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to email Walter directly, or if you have a question for the USHST, don't hesitate to email us.